The man's rifle had been aimed at a deer, but the bullet struck a child instead. The two men present immediately fell into bewildered doubt, wondering if they were experiencing hallucinations. They rushed over in panic to check, only to discover that the victim was indeed a child. They collapsed to his knees, desperately trying to revive the boy's consciousness, while the child's father hurried to the scene. Upon seeing his son lying dead on the ground, the father was plunged into complete despair. Staring at the man who had killed his child, he resolutely grabbed the weapon that had fallen to the ground. Though Dee continuously defended himself over the incident, the old man was consumed by rage and sought only to avenge his son's blood death. However, before he could pull the trigger, a bullet pierced through his chest. The shooter was his friend Anton, who had no choice but to resort to such measures to save his friend Dee's life. Dee was now completely dominated by fear, realizing that their hunting trip had turned them into murderers. In contrast to Dee's panic, his friend Odd appeared remarkably calm at this moment. He dragged both bodies into the bushes to hide them, then pulled Dee away as they fled the scene by car. To fabricate evidence of their absence from the scene, the two drove to a nearby town, entered a grocery store, and deliberately hinted to the shopkeeper that they had been hunting in the area. Having completed these arrangements, the two men drove back to the inn. However, both remained restless, as they were tourists in this place. If they kept hiding in their room without going out, it would surely arouse suspicion among the locals. To prevent further complications, they agreed to flee the area by car. Just as they were packing their belongings to leave, sounds came from downstairs at the inn. Anton walked to the window to observe and discovered that their car tires had been punctured by locals. Had their murder been exposed, Anton had no choice but to go downstairs to assess the situation. Fortunately, it wasn't the murder that had been discovered, but rather that Anton had taken advantage of a man's daughter. It turned out that when the two had just arrived in the small town for sightseeing, Anton had met and had relations with the man's daughter. The man flew into a rage upon learning this and intended to teach Anton a lesson. Thankfully, the town mayor intervened in time to stop the man, but now that the tires were damaged, their escape plan had to be temporarily postponed. The two had no choice but to take the car to a repair shop, but the repairs wouldn't be completed until the next day. Feeling dejected, they entered a bar, only to hear locals discussing the mysterious disappearance of a father and son as soon as they sat down. Upon hearing this, both men immediately turned pale and fled the bar in panic. However, Anton still harbored some hope, believing that the forest was endless and vast. They just needed to get through this one night, and at dawn they could drive away unscathed. But just as he finished speaking, knocking sounds came from outside their door.